what do you do when you get called out for backing out of a plan? Something interesting happened to me this morning. I was in conversation with my partner and we were talking about something we had planned to do together. We'd had this conversation in the past. Hold on a second. We had this conversation in the past already. So, but I immediately jumped into the conversation. I was like, well, at least we're not doing this. And he just kind of went, whoa, hold up a minute. We already talked about it. And I thought you were down. I thought, we were going to at least. And I thought, no, I didn't say anything. He was like, well, you did. So I took a minute and I went back and I remembered the conversation very, very vividly. I remember that we had the conversation. But apparently what happened to me, and I realized that this morning, was that I deleted a part of that conversation. Like it just went by me. I deleted it. And if you are familiar with NLP, you probably understand what I'm talking about. But there was a deletion process that went on there. I just kind of, that singular part, like I remember the conversation. That particular part where I said, okay, I was going to do this thing, I deleted it in my mind. So this morning when I jumped in the conversation, I just jumped in like, well, at least, we're not going there. We're not, and that took him aback. And so he was like, oh my God, like he was sitting at this position where he already thought we're going to go. Because we already agreed that we were going to go there. But I didn't. And so talking through it and me sitting here trying to figure out, this is interesting. A couple of things that I have noticed myself the past weeks is that where every time I immediately jump from my head without filling it out and trying to check, okay, how do I truly really feel about this? I've realized that I do it out of fear. So somebody says to me, do you want to go bungee jumping? My mind's like, what the fuck? You want to die? I'm like, nope, I'm not doing it. But I didn't even give like my brain to finish processing and send the information to my body for me to then react like, well, I have these butterflies. It sounds fun. It sounds interesting. And so this was what happened this morning. I came to that realization. I was like, you know what? This is what's been happening to me. It's that when you ask me something and I immediately go from my head to say no, respond to it without actually following my strategy and listening to my inner authority in terms of, is this something that I really want to do? Is this someplace that I really want to go? It's because of fear. And so how many times have you been in a situation where somebody is telling you, well, you agreed to this thing before, so now you're kind of saying that you're not going to do it. We agree that we're going to travel to some place together. We agree that we're going to do this thing, and you're now backing out. Do you immediately become defensive and you're like, well, I didn't say it at that time, or well, I said it at that time and now I know that I don't want to do it again? Or is it possible for you to train yourself, to encourage yourself to actually take a second, take a pause, take a minute to try to figure out, okay, if indeed I said that I was going to try, why is it that immediately now I just jump to no, and what's causing that to happen? Because for me, I realized that it was fear. And it's not even fear of maybe the thing itself, the journey itself. It's the fear of unknown. Because the kind of person that I have always been is the person that needs to plan everything to detail. I need to know exactly where I'm going to for me to get on that journey. If I don't, there's going to be anxiety. There's going to be like, I was not encouraged to just follow my intuition. I was not encouraged to just let go and I always had to have control of everything. I needed to know where this was going. I needed to know what this was going to result into. Not saying that I don't now, I'm not saying that I don't plan now, but it's just from a different place. But anyway, I realized that it was fear of that. It was fear of not knowing what's going to happen down the line, not knowing what this trip is going to mean for me, not knowing how everything is going to pan out. Was what immediately made me go, nope, I'm not doing it. But taking that moment, taking a minute to actually pause and come away from my brain just going all the time and coming back into my feelings, coming back into my body. It's actually not a bad idea. I must have said yes to it at that point because I was in a different state maybe and I was able to process it better. But this morning the fear jumped in. My brain was like, nope, we're not going. So I'm saying all of this to say that when you find yourself being challenged for backing out of a deal, rather than becoming defensive all of a sudden, or thinking, well, I said no then, I said yes then, I'm saying no now. Not even giving yourself a chance. Take a minute, take a moment to just kind of pause and run it through again and see if your body, if your intuition, if your inner knowing responds differently to it. There is usually a disconnect between what the brain is telling you and what your body wants to do when fear is involved, because your brain is just going to be screaming and throwing all this data at you. And if you're not used to letting your feelings, letting your intuition, letting your body guide you, you'll find it challenging, right, to connect, to listen to that nudge, to listen to that signal that you're receiving. But with practice, just do it constantly. Just put your awareness on it and just do it. Just think about, okay, I mean, I was caught like maybe 2 or 3 times this morning during that conversation where he was just laughing at me saying, I can see you're trying to recenter, you're trying to ground yourself. What's going on there? And that's how it's supposed to be. It doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect all the time. It doesn't mean that because you're now on this spiritual journey, because you're now aware and you now know your, human configuration, you now know your design, you know how you're supposed to respond. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have one of those moments where you slip up. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have one of those times where you're like, fuck it. But the whole point, the work here, is to be able to recalibrate, right? To be able to come back and be like, oh, okay, I slipped right there. But I didn't fall. I didn't totally fall. And if you fell, well, I slipped and I fell, and now I'm going to get back up. And just figure out how to work more with your inner knowing, because that's how it's supposed to be. Your brain is not supposed to make the final decision. Your brain is supposed to help you plan and calculate and compare and contrast, and then send the data to the true processing center in your body, which is your intuition, your inner knowing, that thing that just tells you, there's that thing that always tells you, don't do that, or yeah, this is a go, let's go. And that, I know it sounds crazy because a lot of us have been raised, a lot of the people that I know were raised to know you can't just follow that thing, you can't just listen to your emotions all the time, you have to just shut it down and follow your brain. You can't follow your brain anywhere. You cannot, because your brain is just calculating data. Your brain is just, you can't follow it. When it's done calculating all these things, it's going to send it to you. And you can't tell me that there hasn't been one time in your life where you felt like, I just know that this is the right thing to do. And you went ahead and you did it and you're like, I knew it. And then there were other times where something was telling you, don't do that. But your brain is like, let's do it. And then you went ahead and you did it and you're like, shit, I probably shouldn't have done that. Anyway, so I'm saying all of that to say that when you find yourself in a situation where maybe you're being challenged and you're being called out for backing out of a deal, for backing out of something, then it's worth you taking a moment and allowing yourself that space to ground yourself, to recenter, to recalibrate and process, and try to process it in a different way and see if you're going to come to a different conclusion. Obviously, if you do that and it's still a nope, not doing it, then it's a no. But if it's a, oh, well, actually, I was just afraid, then you've learned something there, right? And you know that all of your experiences in life can't just be based on the immediate response that your brain gives you all the time. You have to feel it out. You have to know. You have to connect deeper to it in a very, very strong way for you to be able to get the signals, for you to be able to understand exactly what you're supposed to do. That's it from me. I gotta get my behind back to work. I wanted to share that with you because it was something I think is a teachable moment. Even for me this morning, it was a teachable moment. And I'm grateful for the kind of partner that I have, because it gives me that space. It gives me that moment, that time to pull myself back together, to do whatever I need to do to come back to center. So yeah, make it a great day. I shall be speaking to you as the day goes by.